So let's just begin, shall we? And bring ourselves into the present. Now we've caught up, and we can move into setting a motivation, and then looking at the most precious teachings of Lord Lama Tsongkhapa. And this is our concluding session today, our fourth session. So what I'll do also is just in the chat, to save Shayla doing it in the chat, I'm just going to paste, not all of those files. I'm just going to paste the single text. I've got a really sensitive mouse here. I think that's the file. Oh, damn. Come on, baby. Work for me. There we go. Nicely done. Okay, so you will have the verses come up on the screen, but also I'm just pasting in there the file. And also, how's the reception? Is it jangled? Shall I change to hotspot? It's okay for you guys? If it gets a bit, let me know and I can shift to my hotspot for reception. Okay? All right. Saves me data in the meantime. I can use the Wi-Fi. All right. How fortunate we are, right? So amazing. And so let's just make sure it's a Mahayana practice by remembering that everything we're doing with our body, speech, and mind is directed towards fulfilling the aims of sentient beings. If it makes the practice more powerful, we can visualize all sentient beings around us. And Guru Shakyamuni Buddha in front, who is inseparable from Lama Tsongkhapa and all our gurus. And just briefly, we can generate the three principal aspects in our going for refuge and generating bodhicitta by, in essence, renouncing our own suffering, generating compassion for others who suffer, developing bodhicitta and correct view. So we can think how, since beginningless time, we have taken all 6 realms of existence within samsara and experienced immeasurable suffering, and not even had a single moment of not being pervaded by suffering. This brief life, like a flash of lightning, will soon be over, and there is no guarantee that we will take rebirth even in the upper realms, particularly if we're bereft of refuge at the time of death. And so our suffering may well be endless unless we counter samsara. Renouncing our own suffering and even samsara for one being, ourselves, is not enough. Everything we experience, from anything, every single thing you can think of, including your body, your qualities, everything, your resources, all comes about through the kindness of others who are countless and suffering, and yet so precious and kind, the cause of our benefit and happiness, the cause by which we can produce enlightenment in our own continuum. And sentient beings are even the cause of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And so taking that sense of responsibility that I must free them from suffering and bring them to enlightenment. This is the best way to repay their kindness. But to do that, I myself need to attain enlightenment. And so with a sense of strong refuge in those who already have the qualities we seek, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and therefore because they already have these qualities, they can show us the way, inspire us in our own practice. So that we may become exactly like them. And also to bring in the correct view, we can think how Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, enlightenment, the sentient beings we seek to give protection to and bring to enlightenment, the sentient beings we seek to benefit, as well as ourselves, are all completely empty of existing from our own side. Because all phenomena lack true existence. Therefore, they can arise. They are dependent. Not only can they function, but we can grow, develop, change, abandon obscurations, develop full realizations, because things are empty of existing independently, because they are dependent. And so keeping as much of this in mind, these three principal aspects, then what we can do is seek to go for refuge. And we can do that together. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And so this week we're endeavoring to finish the three principal aspects of the path. It feels like a great ambition, actually, and you'll understand completely what I'm referring to when we get to verse 13 in particular. My goodness. So brace yourselves. All right. So because it's our last session, the fourth one, we're going to finish correct view and then hopefully get some time for discussion. And so just remembering that the three principal aspects of the path, we had renunciation, so the determination to definitely emerge from what? Emerge from samsara, and to what? So emerge from samsara to liberation. And for us practicing Mahayana, to emerge to great liberation, enlightenment. And not only for ourselves alone, impossible to attain enlightenment for one's own welfare, but nevertheless, we perfect our own welfare by attaining enlightenment. But the sole purpose of attaining enlightenment is for the welfare of all sentient beings, to fulfill their wishes, to bring them to enlightenment. And so we've got the second principal aspect, bodhicitta, and then the third one, correct view, which is what we're looking at part 2 today, which is the correct view of emptiness, the wisdom realizing the lack of inherent existence. And so in these 14 verses we've been looking at by precious Lord Lama Tsongkhapa more than 600 years ago, he's presented these 14 verses for us. And so I think it's important to remember, he had this bodhicitta when he wrote these verses, and it was for the welfare of us, to bring us to enlightenment. And so we can very personally connect with Lama Tsongkhapa in these verses. And so he's going to go through them, outlining the reason, the method, and the measure. The reason we need to attain each of them, the method of how we go about it, and then the measure or the criteria by which we can assess if we've actually attained it. So very, very precious and important. So naturally, I'm doing this teaching from the presentation of the Prasangika tenets or the middle way consequence school, because that is the only school that mentions that final view. All the rest is a stepping stone, which we must, go through to develop. If we're climbing a ladder, we can't just go to the top rung. We have to proceed through the earlier rungs. So they're so important to help us in our understanding. And this is presented from the final view, that lack of inherent existence. All right, so to just bring Lama Tsongkhapa into our heart in a really profound way, to feel his presence. He is with us. It's just that we don't believe it or accept it, and we can't see it because our karma is just so ordinary right now. But as we progress, well before enlightenment, we will be able to meet face to face, as Lama Tsongkhapa did Manjushri. We'll be able to meet face to face Lama Tsongkhapa. So remember Guru Shakyamuni Buddha in front, who's no different to Lama Tsongkhapa. We can imagine he takes the aspect of Lama Tsongkhapa. So be in the presence, feel the presence of Lama Tsongkhapa. Connecting with his holy mind. We can even recite his name mantra. I've got it at the top of the slide there. Om Guru Vajradhara Samati Keti Siddhi Hum Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Samati Keti Siddhi Hum Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Samati Keti Siddhi Hum Hum. And we can imagine white rays of light coming from Lama Tsongkhapa, purifying in general anything that stops us from developing the three principal aspects in our heart, like the 8 worldly concerns generally stop renunciation, self-cherishing stops bodhicitta, self-grasping stops correct view. So purify. Purify not just in general, but in particular What stops us on a personal level from generating the three principal aspects? It might be our laziness, our procrastination, not feeling capable. More than these types of laziness, we might have wrong views, not fully trusting, having conviction based on even reasoning and logic, but certainly faith in the essence of these teachings. And certainly purifying our ignorance, grasping at inherently existent self, an inherently existent phenomena, our body and mind, our aggregates. And then Lama Tsongkhapa sends forth golden rays of light to grant blessings, inspiration, to issue forth these realizations in our mind, certainly in seed form already, but so that they can quickly sprout and fruit. In particular, Lama Tsongkhapa sending forth the blessings to actualize the correct view of emptiness. And so let's recite from the beginning, the verse of homage, and through to verse 10 was where we got up to last session. I bow down to my perfect pure, I do a different translation. I bow down to my perfect gurus, the essential meaning of the victorious one's teachings, the path praised by all the holy victors and their children, the gateway of the fortunate ones desiring liberation. This I shall try to explain as much as I can. Those who are not attached to the pleasures of circling, who strive to make freedoms and endowments meaningful, who entrust themselves to the path pleasing the victorious ones, you fortunate ones, listen with a calm mind. Without the complete intention definitely to be free from circling, there is no way to pacify attachment, seeking pleasurable effects in the ocean of circling. Also, by craving for cyclic existence, embodied beings are continuously bound. Therefore, at the very beginning, seek renunciation. Freedoms and endowments are difficult to find, and life has no time to spare. By gaining familiarity with this, attraction to the appearances of this life is reversed. By thinking over and over again that actions and their effects are unbetraying, and repeatedly contemplating the miseries of cyclic existence, attraction to the appearances of future lives is reversed. When, by having trained in that way, there is no arising even for a second of attraction to the perfections of cyclic existence, and all day and night the intention seeking liberation arises, then the thought of renunciation has been generated. Even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, it does not become a cause of the perfect bliss of unsurpassed enlightenment. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by the tight bonds of karma so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance, endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings, thinking that all mothers are in such a condition, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. In short, this is by Pabonka Rinpoche, but we haven't recited it, so let's do it today. In short, if, like the mother whose cherished son has fallen into a pit of fire and who experiences even 1 second of his suffering as an unbearable eternity, your reflection on the suffering of all other sentient beings has made it impossible for you to bear their suffering for even 1 second. And the wish seeking enlightenment for their sake arises without effort, then you have realized the supreme precious mind of enlightenment. That's the measure or the criteria. Without the wisdom realizing ultimate reality, even though you have generated renunciation and the mind of enlightenment, you cannot cut the root cause of circling. Therefore, attempt the method to realize dependent arising. One who sees the cause and effect of all phenomena of both cyclic existence and the state beyond sorrow as forever unbetraying, and for whom any object trusted in by the grasping mind has completely disappeared, has at that time entered the path pleasing the Buddhas. And so we can stop there. Just notice dependent arising. Notice again this unbetraying, cause and effect, how we enter cyclic existence, how we exit cyclic existence. You know, cause and effect is forever unbetraying. We're talking about dependent arising. And so Lama Tsongkhapa is going to really continue that theme of dependent arising as a way of accessing, understanding in emptiness of inherent existence, that these two go together. They're the same as far as the meaning. And to understand this ultimate reality, this lack of inherent existence, we need to depend on dependent arising as a way of coming closer to breaking through to final reality. So let's go to the emptiness verses above. And so let's look at this verse. This is beginning this session. We're going to look at 11, 12, 13, and then 14. The definition of not having completed the analysis of the right view. So this is not enough. If the appearance that is unbetraying dependent relation, so we've got dependent arising, is accepted separately from emptiness, dependent relation, emptiness, separate. As long as these two understandings are seen as separate, then one has not realized the Buddha's intent. So there's still work to be done. So what Lama Tsongkhapa is talking to us about here is, see, in the lower schools below the Prasangika, they equate existence with inherent existence. So for them, for something to exist, it must inherently exist. If it doesn't inherently exist, it doesn't exist at all. So this is the problem and of the lower schools. And, you know, they have not found the final view. They have not completed the analysis of right view, because they might be able to, from their side, establish dependent arising, but it's entirely separate from this emptiness of inherent existence. Dependent arising and emptiness are unrelated. They're mutually exclusive. There is nothing that is both. Something can't be for them dependent arising and empty of inherent existence, because empty of inherent existence means not existing at all. So this is an obstacle to realizing the Buddha's intent. As long as the understanding of the world of appearance, conventionalities, as long as that's seen as different to ultimate reality, emptiness, then and these two are at odds with each other, where you can't have one without it undermining the other. Okay, so you can't bring them together as the same meaning. You can't reconcile them. You can't see where they meet and converge. Then one's, you know, not going to have understood completely the whole Buddha's intent. So one won't be able to become even liberated, attain a state of anahat, and certainly won't be able to attain enlightenment and so forth. Won't even be able to become an Arya, because you won't be able to realize this emptiness of inherent existence. as asserted in the Prasangika school, whichever path you're following, whether it be a hero, solitary realizer path to liberation, or a bodhisattva path to enlightenment, necessarily one needs the lack of inherent existence as their final view. And so what have I got here? So if conventional truths appear as infallible dependent arising, so accepting dependent arising, accepting on the basis of causes and conditions, things arise and so forth, but not being able to understand how they can be empty of inherent existence, then through that misunderstanding, dependent arising and emptiness, they're seen as separate, unrelated, incompatible. So pretty much these are things I've already addressed and discussed with you. So you might accept dependent arising, but you don't accept emptiness of inherent existence. Or you might have some understanding of emptiness of inherent existence, but you can't see, therefore, how things can actually conventionally exist, because it's as if you have some understanding of inherent existence, but through that lack of inherent existence, you come to a point where nothing exists. And so there's this giant disconnect between dependent arising and emptiness. And while these haven't come together, there's still a lot of work to be done. Whereas, what we're going to see is dependent arising and emptiness have the same meaning. And so Lama Tsongkhapa has been bringing us to this point as we have proceeded since verse 9 there of dependent arising. Okay, so we must continue to strive to discover the final thought or intent. We must overcome this incompatibility of emptiness and dependent arising. And we've basically got to come in the next verse, we've got to come to, let's have a look at it, to having completed the analysis of the right view. That's where we have been able to bring together the meaning of dependent arising and the meaning of emptiness, and seeing how by having these come together to meet as the same meaning, then we have completed the analysis of the right view. So we can have a look at the criteria or the measure of having fully understood emptiness, as in this verse. Let's read it first. If these two realizations, so we're talking about dependent arising and emptiness, are happening simultaneously without alternation, and from merely seeing dependent relation as completely unbetraying, the definite ascertainment comes that completely destroys the way all objects are apprehended as truly existent. At that time, the analysis of the ultimate view is complete. So it's getting a little bit harder, isn't it? But basically, if we just keep the essence in our heart, that this is the measure by having fully understood emptiness, and it's talking about where one has the understands emptiness in terms of dependent arising and understands dependent arising in terms of emptiness. So these two have the same meaning. They come together like two sides of one coin. We've got the ultimate truth of emptiness of inherent existence and the conventionality, the existent by which exists necessarily. That conventionality has arisen from within a state of emptiness. Things are made manifest, things can exist, things can arise necessarily because they lack inherent existence. Inherent existence isn't something separate over here, independent from the basis. So you cannot have a basis separate to emptiness of inherent existence. These have to be together on one basis. And so to understand reality, emptiness of inherent existence, we need to understand how it can depend and arise because it lacks inherent existence. And because it lacks inherent existence, it can arise. And because it is dependent, it is necessarily lacking inherent existence. It's necessarily nominally existent. It exists in mere name because it lacks inherent existence. So we might get to see how these things can come together and how we can reconcile these two realizations and can posit both on one object. So that's very important. Let's see. Now, arising, okay, yeah, good. I want to talk about this simultaneous bit. So arising, once you've non-conceptually or perceptually, but better it is to use the word non-conceptually realized emptiness, you've gone into meditative equipoise, you know, the yogi is realizing emptiness of inherent existence. What appears is only emptiness, only the lack. It's a non-affirming negation, nothing other is appearing. Such a realization is free of dualistic appearances. There's this like pure water poured into pure water. There is no way of distinguishing the subject from the object, the mind realizing the emptiness and the emptiness itself. They appear totally mixed as this one purity of say water, and there's no conventionality appearing. There's no generic image. There's no, you know, dependent arising. There's nothing appearing other than emptiness, this lack of inherent existence. So there's certainly no appearances of inherent existence. So when you're not in meditative equipoise as a sentient being, necessarily because of these knowledge obscurations that exist in our continuum, we have these imprints of ignorance which throw up appearances of inherent existence. Everything appears to inherently exist. And that's why every mind for a sentient being other than this meditative equipoise perceptually realizing emptiness is mistaken. Every mind is mistaken for a sentient being because it has these appearances of true existence. So the only non-mistaken mind is this meditative equipoise that's non-conceptually realizing emptiness. So it has no appearance of even inherent existence because only the lack of inherent existence is appearing. Okay, so what is being realized is the lack of inherent existence. So in the face of that most precious, powerful antidote, it's impossible for inherent existence to appear because one's realizing the lack of inherent existence. One's realizing that inherent existence doesn't exist. And what does exist is the emptiness, the lack of inherent existence that exists. So arising from this meditative equipoise on emptiness, when you come out of that meditation into what's called subsequent attainment or post-meditative equipoise, then through the power of that realization of emptiness, it's able to induce, just on seeing phenomena, sentient beings, you know, our body, any phenomena, just on seeing any phenomena, any dependent arising, the power of that meditation coming forth is able to induce or trigger for us that things, yes, they appear to inherently exist, but we now know that that is not how they exist. So it appears to inherently exist, but we know with great certainty, having realized it, that that is false. It appears to inherently exist, but it doesn't exist that way because now we've realized non-conceptually this lack of inherent existence. And so these two minds aren't simultaneous as those words kind of lead us to think, because they're only simultaneous realizing ultimate truth and conventional truth on the ground of a Buddha. And for us as an, you know, if we had this realization as an Arya being, they're not going to be simultaneous. But what it's saying is that there's no other mind that comes in between. And it's kind of like instantly seeing dependent arising triggers our awareness of the lack of inherent existence. And, you know, we realize then conceptually, because we're in subsequent attainment, we realize conceptually that lack of inherent existence. And when we think of emptiness, it induces or triggers us to realize dependent arisings, that they are mere, they're like mere appearances, that they exist not as conventional truths, because they're false. They're conventional truths are true for ignorance, but the yogi is seeing that they exist, they're conventionalities, they do exist. The conventional truths are now realized to be conventional truths, as in true for ignorance, but they're not actually true. What is true is, for instance, this emptiness. When we're in meditative equipoise, it appears to lack inherent existence, and it is lacking inherent existence by its actual nature. So the mode of appearance and the mode of abidance, the actual reality of phenomena, these two are in accord when you're in meditative equipoise. Coming out of that into subsequent attainment, when things appear to inherently exist due to our imprints of ignorance, they appear one way, but we now know they don't exist like that in reality. So the mode of appearance and the way they actually exist, the mode of appearance is to inherently exist, but the way they exist is lacking inherent existence. So these two modes are discordant. They don't exist in the way they appear, right? They don't exist in the way they appear. They're false. So conventional truths, the yogi would realize that them to now be conventional truths, truth for ignorance, but not true, because they're false. They don't exist in the way they appear. So that's kind of maybe something to try to remember. So the yogi realizes that things do exist coming out of this meditative equipoise, but they merely exist. They are a mere dependent origination. They exist in name only, merely labeled by the mind outwardly. There is nothing coming from the side of the object. There is no true existence coming from the side of the object. There's no inherent existence coming from the side of the object. There's not even a portion of something coming from the side of the object. Everything that exists is merely labeled by the mind outwardly, one direction, not something coming from the side of the object and the consciousness, not like that. Outwardly, one direction. Things are merely labeled by the mind. There is nothing in and of itself existing in the object. So this is like really full on and powerful. And obviously I can't do it justice because I have no realizations or qualities, to be able to give this teaching. So yeah, all I can do is mouth the words and whatever small intellectual understanding that I may have. But really, this is something that each of us need to increase our study, reflection, meditation, and try to come closer to understanding this subtle dependent arising, that emptiness, dawns as the meaning of, dependent arising, and dependent arising dawns as the meaning of emptiness. And these two realizations come together without alternation, in the sense of nothing coming in between those two minds. So in subsequent attainment, things are appearing like an illusion. They don't exist in the way they appear. So like that, pretty full on. All right, so let's go on to verse 13. This is really complicated. Oh my goodness. I was wondering, how do I make any sense of this myself? How do I make any sense of it myself to be able to even say the words of what this means? This is just like way too much. There's so much in this verse, and it can lead to so much confusion. And now I know why I haven't received many teachings on this verse. It's quickly just, gone through. And it's probably because, we generally lack the merit to understand it. There's a lot of backstory that, one could go into of, what's the lower school's positions on how they think that they are the middle way and not falling into extreme of existence or extreme of non-existence. and how they say the other schools do fall into the extreme of existence or the extreme of non-existence. And there's all this backstory and there's all these debates, and then schools come out and say, you know, well, actually you fall into the extreme of existence and we avoid the extreme of non-existence that you accuse us of, because this is how we establish the middle way. And oh my gosh, it's just so much. But let's read the verse and see whatever we can make of it. Okay, so this is unique and it's only asserted by the Prasangika school. They say, furthermore, appearance eliminates the extreme of existence, and emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. If you realize how emptiness manifests in a manner of cause and effect, then you are not captivated by wrong notions, holding extreme views. My goodness. So basically, if we can equate this existence with inherent existence, okay? So we're saying appearance eliminates the extreme of inherent existence. Dependent arising eliminates the extreme of independence, something being independent. Yeah, it's confusing, right? Independence with a pause, independence. So dependent arising is completely opposite to inherent existence. Existing in dependence on other is completely opposite to existing independently without depending. So furthermore, appearance eliminates the extreme of existence. If we can understand things dependently arise, that means that they must be empty of inherent existence. If they are dependently arising, they cannot be independent. They cannot be inherently existent. They must be lacking inherent existence. Understanding that things dependently arise. Okay, independence on causes and conditions, parts, merely labeled by the mind, this sort of thing. Understanding things dependently arise means that they must be empty of inherent existence. Means that they must be free from the extreme of existence. Means that they must be free of the extreme of inherent existence. Means that they must be free of the extreme of existing independently. Okay? Independent existence, inherent existence. It's a lot, isn't it? Hopefully some of that makes some sense. So if something is dependent, it cannot be independent. If it is dependent, it cannot exist inherently. So this is very unique because all the lower schools assert dependent arising and they assert inherent existence. But Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, no, 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 no. You cannot assert dependent arising and inherent existence. If something is dependent arising, if it's dependently arisen, it cannot have inherent existence. It must lack inherent existence. Oh, I think I need a sip of water after that first line. This is something that just takes reading again and again and again over several days and weeks and months, and then taking it into meditation. It's really hard on one level, but on another level, it's kind of simple. But that they're just the moments of clarity that come, and you go, oh yeah, I think I got it, but no, there's no way we're coming close to getting it as well. That second line, emptiness of inherent existence, right? Because this is the Prasangika view, emptiness of inherent existence eliminates or dispels, destroys the extreme of non-existence. So these lower schools accuse the Prasangikas who assert lack of inherent existence of falling into nihilism or non-existence. They say, because you say things do not inherently exist, they don't exist at all for you. So you fall into non-existence. If something exists, it's got to inherently exist. If you say it lacks inherent existence, then it would not exist. So they say you fall into non-existence, that extreme. And we say, no, 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 no. This lack of inherent existence, because it lacks inherent existence, that eliminates the extreme of non-existence, which basically is saying that because things are empty of inherent existence, they can arise. Because things lack inherent existence, we don't fall into non-existence because they lack inherent existence. Because of that, they can arise because they are empty. If something is empty of inherent existence, it can arise, it can function, it can develop, it can rely on other factors, it can be influenced by causing conditions, it can have parts and all of these sorts of things. So because things are empty, it can arise. So we don't fall into the extreme of non-existence because things can arise because they're lacking inherent existence. So because things lack inherent existence, they can arise. Karma, actions and results, cause and effect, all these things do arise because things lack inherent existence. So falling into nihilism is supremely dangerous because one can discount even karma, cause and effect. And then if there's no karma, cause and effect, there's no reason to abide in ethics or anything like this. And so, this is very much more dangerous to fall into nihilism or non-existence than it is to fall into the extreme of existence. Because even if you assert inherent existence, you can still, assert, ethics and all of these, things. So Prasangika is saying, we assert lack of inherent existence. It's not meaning that there is nothing existing at all, as you tell us. That's your view, that if things don't inherently exist, they don't exist at all. We don't say that. We say the opposite. Because things lack inherent existence, they can arise, they can function, So what Lama Tsongkhapa is talking about here is all of this dependent arising. So, he's gone through it in verse 9, 10, 11, 12, and now 13, because it's the king of reasoning, right? So Lama Tsongkhapa is really bringing this home throughout this entire prayer. Because things are dependent, right, then they cannot inherently exist because they are dependent. So we don't fall into the extreme. This first line, dependent arising or appearance, think conventionalities appearing, dependent arising, ourselves, agent, action, object, anything that we see, experience, anything that's non-emptiness, other than emptiness. So dependent arising or appearance, that eliminates or dispels the extreme of existence. So because things are dependent, they are not independent, they are not inherently existent. And dependent arising, and because things are arising, okay, dependent arising, king of reasoning, because they are arising, then this second line here, they dispel the extreme of non-existence. For something to arise, it's not non-existent, okay? If it arises, it's not non-existent. And things can only arise if they are empty of inherent existence. So you could say something is not inherently existent. It's not inherently existent. That would dispel the extreme of existence if it's not inherently existent. Inherent existence is the extreme of existence, right? So if it's not inherently existence, it dispels that extreme of existence. Now, if it's not inherently existent, then you're saying that it's not independently existing. So therefore you're saying it's dependently existing. So basically this dependent arising, these two come together as the same meaning. So let's see what I've got on the slide here. Unique presentation, yep. Okay, let's have a review and see what I've said here. All right. Dependent arising or appearance dispels the extreme of existence. When you think of extreme of existence, think of inherent existence. Dependent arising dispels the extreme of inherent existence. Because for things to appear, they must be empty of inherent existence. They've got to depend. They can't be independent. They've got to depend. They've got to depend on other. For something to appear, even just to an eye consciousness, it's got to depend on like the object, the eye consciousness, the eye sense power. It's got to depend on causes and conditions and parts, all this sort of stuff. So for things to appear, necessarily they must depend. Necessarily, they must not be independent or inherently existent. So equate those two words, independent and inherently existent. That often helps as well. So the fact that things appear, okay, it's impossible that we fall into the extreme of existence, because for things to appear, they must lack inherent existence. If it exists, it does not inherently exist. Okay, so extreme of existence is inherent existence, but if it exists, it must not inherently exist. If it exists, it must not inherently exist because it depends. And so that's really hard for us because things do appear inherently existent. If it appears, it is not inherently existent. If it had been inherently existent, it would be independent. It wouldn't depend on an eye consciousness realizing the object. It wouldn't depend on the eye sense power. It wouldn't depend on the object itself having parts or causes and conditions and so forth. It would just be independent, unrelated to anything else. It would just exist in this, solid, absolute way. It couldn't relate and depend on cause and conditions. It couldn't change. It couldn't arise. It couldn't cease. It would always have to have existed like that inherently. Yeah, okay, let's see what else I've got here. Oh yeah, exists. So whatever exists as a dependent arising. So what this is talking about is this is validating, Lama Tsongkhapa is validating nominal existence, that things exist in mere name, not inherently. With inherent existence, the measure of inherent existence is when the imputed object is sought among its basis of designation, it's not found. If we look within the basis of designation of the body, for instance, there is no part called body that is to be found. What is found is nothing other than a bunch of causes and conditions and parts coming together, and independence on that body, functioning as a body, being a valid basis for designating, we impute the term body. We label outwardly on that basis body. But there is no body that is found when we search for it within this basis of designation in an ultimate way. So we always have to make sure that we're not destroying conventionalities here. We have to search for the inherently existent body, and that's what we're refuting, the inherent existence of the body. We're not refuting the body. The body exists. Pinch yourself if you dare, and you'll see you exist. You know, you'll feel and all of this sort of stuff. Your body ages and so forth. So we're not refuting existence. We're refuting how it exists, because how it appears to exist is not how it exists in reality. And that's the challenge. Ooh, this is full on. So emptiness. I'm looking at the second line in a bit more detail as a revision. This is probably things I've already said, but it doesn't hurt to revise it. Emptiness dispels the extreme of non-existence. It's not that lack of inherent existence means that things don't exist at all. Not like that. Emptiness dispels the lack of inherent existence. It's not negating all of existence whatsoever. It's negating how things exist. It's not saying they don't exist. It's negating that they don't exist inherently. That's not how they exist. But conventional existence still remains. So that's very important, that what you're refuting is the object of negation. You're not refuting conventional existence and saying nothing exists at all. You're refuting a particular way of existing and saying that doesn't exist. Things don't exist inherently. They do exist. They are empty of inherent existence. And because they're empty means they can arise, means they can appear, means they are dependently arisen or arising. So realization of emptiness, what it refutes is inherent existence. Okay, so it's not saying the person doesn't exist, the basis of designating the person, the body, the mind, it's not saying these don't exist. They do exist. How do they exist? They exist merely labeled by the mind, merely labeled outwardly in dependence on causes and conditions and parts, for instance. And if we search for the inherently existent body, the inherently existent mind, or the inherently existent person that we label onto the body and mind, we won't find the inherently existent anything. We won't find the inherently existent person, and we won't even find the basis the body and mind inherently exists. We'll only find its lack of inherent existence. Okay, so what can I say? So dependent arising and emptiness, these have the same meaning. They're not the same, but they have the same meaning. They come to the same point. So because something is empty, it is necessarily dependent arising. For something to be a dependent arising, it has to be empty of inherent existence. So if we can bring together these two, then dependent arising and emptiness, then we're not going to be captivated. This fourth line, we're not going to be captivated by wrong views, falling into extreme of permanence, extreme of absolutism, extreme of existence, different names, but same thing it's getting at. Or we're not going to fall into the extreme of nihilism or fall into the extreme of non-existence. So if we can bring together dependent arising and emptiness of inherent existence, which no other school other than the Prasangika can do, then we're not going to fall into extremes. And so, yeah, that's like so full on. I want to go on to verse 14 to conclude the verses, and then we can break for a discussion and these sorts of things. So let's have a look at verse 14. And you might just need to ground yourself because your head might be spinning like mine. And if it's not spinning, I so rejoice because your merit must be wonderfully strong. All right, verse 14, if we can relax a little bit now. Having gained definite ascertainment, advice on pursuing the practice. So this is where Lama Tsongkhapa is is talking to us, and he's saying, he's urging us to engage in these teachings. So read them every day. Try to, like, meditate on them as you read them, and not sort of just hurry through them if possible, even if it's only once a week that you get the leisure to, the fortune to make these verses at a heart level. Also, naturally we've got to study. How do we make sense of this unless we study? I think study is so important and precious, and it is complicated, it is hard, but it's never to be dismissed. Anything we can learn on emptiness, we need emptiness. We can't just have renunciation or bodhicitta. We can't even have bodhicitta without renunciation. So whichever goal we seek of liberation or enlightenment, necessarily we must have, whatever vehicle, we must have this lack of inherent existence to achieve that goal. So we must study, we must reflect, we must meditate on the three principal aspects. We must, if we haven't even doubted it, we must generate doubt. Maybe things do lack inherent existence. Maybe things are empty. And having such a doubt that is turning towards the correct, view, it's turning in a positive direction, then it's going to encourage us to study. It's going to encourage us to develop a correct assumption about emptiness, that, things are lacking inherent existence. Things are dependent arising. And the more we can understand about the two, they reinforce the other. The more we understand lack of inherent existence, we understand dependent arising, and so forth. And from this correct assumption, we can eventually break through to a conceptual realization of emptiness, a union of calm abiding and special insight, realizing emptiness. So we can progress along the path of accumulation, preparation, develop a non-conceptual realization of emptiness on the path of seeing, continue to develop it throughout the path of meditation to the path of no more learning. So Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, go forth and study this, reflect on this. And when you understand it, take it into retreat and meditate on it, single-pointedly even. So we need a massive merit. We need good guru devotion so that we can petition the guru, and this massive merit and massive understanding of, merit of wisdom, merit of method to support us in our practice, and resort to solitude. If you cannot physically take solitude, then at least in one's busy lives, at least take mental solitude. So retreat from what? Retreat from the afflictions, retreat from the busyness, try to take on less things, and trying to find space, mental space to reflect on this in retreat. Joyous effort is going to be that wind that gives, that the sails of the method and wisdom, can take us forward. It's going to give wind to our method and wisdom. So this joyous effort to accomplish the stages of the path all the way through to the path of no more learning, and to then attain our final goal of enlightenment. So then we can really benefit sentient beings. So the whole purpose of benefiting sentient beings is to attain enlightenment. And then we can do it in a correct, unmistaken way. And so to attain enlightenment, we necessarily need the three principal aspects of the path. And so this, what have I got here? No, that's pretty much it. Okay, so we'll go to discussion shortly. So this prayer was written for a particular disciple, Sako Ngawan Drakpa, who was one of the first 4 disciples of Lama Tsongkhapa. And he used to go with Lama Tsongkhapa. He was actually a chief attendant, and he used to go chief attendant to Lama Tsongkhapa, and he would go with him from monastery to monastery, and he received many teachings on sutra, tantra, empowerments, and all this sort of stuff. And he had great realizations himself, and he was quite instrumental in spreading the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa. And it was so precious to read that Kedrip J actually wrote his eulogy. So it was just so beautiful to see that connection with, not only Lama Tsongkhapa, but with Kedrip J and so forth. So yeah, remember, although it was written specifically for Sako Ngao and Drakpa, with Lama Tsongkhapa's Bodhicitta and wanting to bring us to enlightenment, it's also written for us. And so it's nice to think of it in that way, that we too are Lama Tsongkhapa's spiritual children. All right. So just wondering, where are you at? Do you have any specific questions at this stage that I can, I don't know, try to attempt to answer? Do you have anything in particular at this stage that you'd like to bring up? Jai and Barbara. Should we go to Australia first? A different time zone. All right, what you got?
Okay, this is God, this is such a question that I have pondered, and I've listened to classes, and exactly.
How do you expect me to help you? Go on.
Well, because you can give me the benefit of what your understanding is, your advice and your experience. Okay.
Sure. Otherwise, we can at least share the same doubt. So yeah, there's
and I
definite
think
benefit.
For me, I totally agree. It's something that I have to look at and look at and look at. Totally. I've even, and as a matter of fact, yesterday I looked up just to get the most simple definition of emptiness I possibly could. I went to Tricycle. I don't know if you know them.
I've seen it, but not followed it.
If you Google it, it's just basic Buddhist concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually, interestingly enough, this morning, I was reading that as I exercised and taking it on, trying to take it on board as simple as possible, because my brain just explodes with this stuff.
I get it.
Okay. So here's what I would like to know. I've got two things. One of which is, you made a statement which makes me very nervous, because I feel like I get the bodhicitta wing. Okay. Yeah. And then what you're saying is you can't have bodhicitta without emptiness. It's like I panic because, at least I feel like I've got some insight into one concept, but to separate them out, okay.
Hang on a sec.
What's your understanding?
Can we stop there? Can we stop there? So
please, yes.
Do you know, did I specifically say, I'm not saying I didn't, but did I specifically say you can't have bodhicitta without emptiness, or you can't attain the goal of bodhicitta enlightenment without emptiness? Or did I say you can't have bodhicitta without renunciation? Did I specifically say what you said?
I don't know what my colleagues heard. Maybe I misunderstood, and maybe that's what my worry is. But certainly there was some form of no bodhicitta without emptiness. It was close to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that exactly, because dull faculty bodhisattvas, Jetsunpa says most of them realize emptiness before generating bodhicitta, even for the sharp faculty. So, but there would be some dull faculty that don't realize emptiness before developing bodhicitta. So I wouldn't say that as a blanket statement. Certainly Lama Tsongkhapa has written this in the spirit of the sharp faculty bodhisattva, and so therefore they have necessarily realized emptiness prior to bodhicitta. But I would not say that you cannot, as a rule, not develop bodhicitta without realization of emptiness. I would hesitate to say that is so.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly for the sharp faculty, they necessarily realize emptiness first, because they're not going to make a commitment to strive single-pointedly for enlightenment if they don't even know enlightenment exists.
Okay.
So they need reasons and logic to prove it's worth striving for enlightenment by knowing it exists. And the only reason they know it can exist is because they can see how they create causes to enter cyclic existence and how they can undo those causes with the wisdom realizing emptiness. They can undo their ignorance that creates samsara. And so therefore they can achieve liberation or enlightenment. So yeah, so don't lose faith, and please let me never be a cause to lose faith. So maybe I would clarify it like that. And also, if possible, I can misspeak sometimes because my head's in a spin sometimes, going, whoa, like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you.
And I easily
next
could have
thing you
missed a
had?
nuance. I do have
Right.
another question, but I'm happy to
Go for
wait.
it. No, go
No?
for it. Let's
No?
do it
Okay.
now. Yep. Thank you.
All right. And again, this is something I struggle with,
Sure.
and that is my sense of I. And then when we get into emptiness, it's like, what goes on? It's not, can you, yeah, that's where I get all befuddled.
So you're feeling maybe you fall more into a non-existence, a nihilism or something?
No, it's like I'm totally convinced that I exist, but there is an I. Yeah.
There is an I, but it's merely labeled. It's a mere I. There is no I that exists inherently, because if you search for which is I, which is I, when you do it, is it your body? Is it your speech? Is it your mind? Is it parts of your body? Is it parts of your mind? Is it your ignorance? Is it your compassion? Which part of your mind is I? Which moment of mind is I? Is it only the present moment? Is it not the past moment, which gives rise to the present, which no longer exists because the future moment's already come about? When you search for the inherently existent I, you're not saying there is no I. There is an I, yeah? But there's no inherently existent I. There's no independent, unrelated I that is found within that basis of body, speech, and mind, or body and mind, or the five aggregates. Just sounds more complicated when we say the five aggregates, but basically body and mind. Yeah.
So what goes on? What goes on? What is
the mere I takes? So there is an I. What goes on is at the end of death, the mind, the extremely subtle fundamental mind, leaves this body, which has now become a corpse because death has now occurred at that stage. So death has happened. The extremely subtle fundamental mind goes on into a bardo state usually, and then within 49 days will necessarily have taken another rebirth. And if you look at a tantric point of view, the body is inseparable from the wind, like a horse, and the rider on a horse. So the body and the mind are inseparable in the sense that the extremely subtle body is the wind that the extremely subtle fundamental mind rides on. So this goes on to take a new rebirth. Now, wherever there is body and mind for a sentient being, there is the basis by which one can impute an I. I is merely labeled in dependence on a body and mind. So when we take rebirth, that's hopefully not as an animal, but hopefully as a person, then once again, that mere I is, taking rebirth. And then, let's say we come out of the womb and then we're given a different name by our parents, for instance, and then we, appear as that. But nevertheless, there is a continuation of mind, or body and mind from the tantric view, the wind and mind. And therefore there is the basis of designation. But there is no inherently existent, independent, solidly I to be found. And do the reflection and try to debate with yourself, what am I? If I'm my body, then I can't think, I can't feel, and throw up consequences. And if I'm, I can't talk about being hungry. I can't say I'm hungry, because if I'm my mind, hunger is a physical sensation, and if I'm my mind, well, which part of my mind, which moment of my mind? And if I was, am I my anger? But anger is not always manifest. So am I not manifest when I have patience and loving kindness? And, try to do the reflection and throw up consequences to debate with yourself. I find that helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you for your help.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Barbara.
It is a lot.
I know. I'm sorry.
I understand the words and get the words,
Same.
but I am so far from understanding and getting it.
Same.
And I guess what I think, I just this last week, I've been comparing enlightenment to the 3-point death meditation. In that, I think both are inevitable. We don't know the timing of when we will die or when we will become enlightened.
Okay.
And that Dharma is the answer to both. I just have put those, death and enlightenment, together.
Sure.
And I guess it's just a matter of thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. I feel like I'm so far from I understand the words and get the words,
Yeah,
but I
me
feel
too.
like there's huge gap
Me
between
too.
getting
And
it.
just be patient, you know, like death is going to come before 3 countless great eons. Enlightenment comes in, you know, maybe 3 countless great eons, perhaps, right? You heard that before, Barbara. So death is going to come far quicker than enlightenment. Death is going to come about whether we put into place the causes and conditions or not. Enlightenment will not come about that way. And like you jump to the 3rd point of Dharma is what's necessary. Yeah.
But I think that they're both, it's a given for both of them. It's just the timing.
I would say this, yeah, I see what you're saying and I like what you're saying. But I also I'm a bit reluctant to think that enlightenment is a given, because it sounds like I don't have to do so much then. I know you got your 3rd point jumping in, say you got to practice Dharma, and whatever works for you. It's really great that you're drawing those things in and trying to make connections. So that's really awesome. But yeah, as long as it doesn't give you procrastination and laziness to come in, but that you see that enlightenment is a caused phenomenon and therefore I must make effort while I have this precious human rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I feel the same about dying peacefully. That is not going to just happen. That takes lots of study and I don't know. They just that process seems the same for me.
Yeah.
I definitely believe that I'm going to die. And I definitely believe that inevitably I will become enlightened. And again, who knows when?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just think about it, think about it, think about it, think about it.
Exactly. And accumulate so much merit, accumulate masses of merit. And if you have a guru, petition the guru, like Lama Tsongkhapa would petition Manjushri, you know, and just work at it, because whether death or enlightenment comes first, it doesn't matter, does it? In the sense of, you know, you're practicing the Dharma. And so that's a good way of going. And also, Barbara, if I may, I thought about you a lot during the week, because I was reading several times a day Kajula's prayer of the swift return for Kabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Have you seen the Kajula's swift return prayer?
I have. In fact, there was a practice today when Venerable Katie read it.
Great. So every paragraph is mentioning emptiness in some way or shape or form. Every paragraph is bringing up this notion of emptiness, and it's beyond precious for that aspect. So I thought about you so much because, you know, in remembering emptiness, we're not going to be having that grasping at the swift return. It's going to try to help counter the self-grasping by remembering the emptiness with each of those verses. So yeah, I don't know if that struck you as well, but you were, many times in my thoughts each day because of that. So thank you.
Thank you. And I didn't make that, when listening to that prayer, I didn't make that connection.
Have a look now, because just so often it comes up, and it's just remarkable how she's expressed it is so eloquent. I'm just going to see if I can try to have a look. Lamenting Whale, and I'll just We might even read it at the end, hey? How about that? We can read it at the end. I can screen share it. Okay.
Thank you so much, Venerable. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Anyone else with a question or a comment or a doubt or anything? Otherwise, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, maybe. Here we go. Here's our friend that's got something. Is there a way to get a copy of that prayer? Yeah, if I can find, let me see if I can find it in my downloads. It's in my downloads because we want to have the correct version. Downloads, Finder, Review. Just bear with me. I'm just getting the file as was asked in the chat. Swift Return version 2. I'm putting it in the chat for you. So hopefully it comes up. Okay. Well, if you haven't got any questions immediately at the moment, I'd like to definitely do one thing, and then we can have a look at some other discussion questions as well. So if we may, because we have finished the verses, Lama Tsongkhapa, it would be nice if we can just complete the practice of how we do each of the times of bringing to mind Lama Tsongkhapa visualized in front and so forth, and seeing if we can, let's see if I can get an end of this. We'll have a look at some of these questions shortly. So let's just take the time because I'm mindful of the time. Remembering Guru Lama Tsongkhapa in front of us has been on this journey with us throughout this morning or this evening for you guys in America. But he is totally accessible in each moment. And this is the beauty, I find, of connecting with the precious holy Guru, Kabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, in a mental way, and Lama Tsongkhapa in a mental way, all the Nalanda Masters, Shakyamuni Buddha, I mean, in a mental way, they're always there with us. In each moment, we can bring them to mind. And so Lama Tsongkhapa can be with us in each moment. And so having visualized him in front, we can even refresh by saying the name mantra 3 times. Mama Guru Vajradhara, Samatikati Siddhi Hum Hum. Mama Guru Vajradhara, Samatikati Siddhi Hum Hum. Mama Guru Vajradhara, Samatikati Siddhi Hum Hum. And visualize precious Lord Lama Tsongkhapa sending rays of golden light, blessing our mind stream, inspiring us to practice, to be the fortunate ones, and with a clear mind, generate the mind that is determined to definitely emerge from samsara. Blessing our mind to develop the mind of enlightenment, Bodhicitta, and blessing our mind to actualize the correct view of emptiness, to be able to see the relationship of dependent arising and emptiness is the same meaning. And then Lama Tsongkhapa can actually come to the crown of our heads and dissolve and remain firmly at our heart. So dissolve through the crown and down to the very indestructible drop at the heart, where the extremely subtle fundamental mind abides. And what remains with us throughout all our lives. May we become exactly like Guru Lama Tsongkhapa. Amazing. Okay. So, yeah, if we come together at another point in the future, maybe we'll look more at the discussion on renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view, because I've got a load of questions there that that could be good to go through, but I just don't think we're going to have time to go through it because it's only an hour and a half. But if we have just a brief momentary look at renunciation, let's see what's we've talked a lot about renunciation in our daily lives and how renunciation is necessary for pure refuge. Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, a refuge for those intent on liberation. So to have that wish to be free of samsara, that mind intent on liberation, that wish of renunciation, that determined mind, that's what Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha are really for in a pure way. Because, you know, Buddha said, I can show you the path to liberation, but know that liberation itself depends on you. So then if we've got renunciation, then our refuge becomes more pure. We're intent on liberation. So yeah, we can look in the future, you know, other things. We did talk about renunciation and how the more we develop renunciation, the greater our strength of great compassion. The more we understand our own suffering, the greater our empathy for others, right? But the more we understand our own suffering in samsara, particularly the third type of suffering, the more we would naturally have compassion for other sentient beings, and you know, simultaneously in one mind, great compassion for all sentient beings. So bodhicitta, we could have looked at some, how it's necessary to have bodhicitta, genuine bodhicitta, how it's necessary to prior have that renunciation. Because if you don't wish yourself to be free of suffering, there's no way you can develop genuine bodhicitta that wishes to free all sentient beings from suffering and bring them to enlightenment. So, you know, the three principal aspects are showing us we have to have renunciation, even as Mahayanists. We can't just have bodhicitta without that renunciation. All right. Do take good care to protect yourselves, balance. You don't want to be burning out. You want to definitely overcome self-cherishing, which stops bodhicitta, but we have to recognize where we're at. I love the saying, and it suits me for more than 10 years or more. You know, I am a work in progress. It gives me permission to make mistakes and be okay with that. I don't have to be perfect. I can make mistakes because I'm a work in progress. So I'm a work in progress. I'll need to rest. I'll need to, you know, to not be too lazy, right? But, you know, take rest, not burn out. So these are important things in how we can care for ourselves. All right. And then with the emptiness, we didn't get to have discussion today, but these are things that I've mentioned, you know, how we've got to have emptiness to attain either goal of liberation or enlightenment. We can rely on famous teachers like Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, Buddhapalita, Chandrakirti, Shantideva. So they're from the Nalanda masters, and Lama Tsongkhapa as well. Any of these great holy beings, they will teach us the final view. So anything we can read on them is perfect. Emptiness has the same meaning as dependent arising, but it doesn't mean that whatever is emptiness is necessarily a dependent arising, because whatever is emptiness is permanent. It's a lack. It's a negation, a non-affirming negation. So whatever is emptiness is not dependent arising. Dependent arising, a book exists. It's an affirming phenomenon. So don't confuse emptiness and dependent arising thinking that they're the same in all ways. They're not. If everything was emptiness, that means everything is ultimate truth. Everything is emptiness means there is no conventional truth. So everything is only a lack and an object that's been negated. So don't fall into that trap, but the meaning is the same. So, okay, and is whatever is empty a dependent arising? Yes. Is whatever is and even emptiness itself is empty. So you can say what is empty is a dependent arising, but you cannot say what is emptiness is a dependent arising. What is lack of inherent existence? Because lack of inherent existence, emptiness, a vase has a lack of inherent existence, but a vase is not emptiness. A vase is an affirming phenomenon that, is a conventional truth and so forth, whereas emptiness is an ultimate truth. So anyway, various other questions we could have gone through, but I'm aware of the time and I've already gone over. So let's see what the chat says for a second. I found this helpful. So thank you, Jay. We'll have a look at that at some point soon. Yeah.
That is actually How to See Yourself as You Really Are by the Dalai Lama.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
But I found it on archive. You can access it easily. Yeah.
Great. I'm just going to click on it so that I can see it later, but I don't want to view it right now during this thing, but I don't want to miss it as well. Thank you for that. All right, let's do the dedications. We've had 4 glorious weeks. Hopefully they've been glorious for you. I'm not sure. But anyway, you've helped me immeasurably by engaging in a lot of preparation and staying out of trouble and hopefully creating a lot of virtue and merit. So thank you for that. And all the merit we can dedicate for the welfare of all sentient beings, our coming together and participating, hopefully having a heart of joy as we delight in virtue. And we can dedicate all of that for the welfare of all sentient beings, for their flourishing. May we quickly fulfill all their wishes. And we can do the prayers. May the precious supreme Bodhicitta, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. May the precious view of emptiness, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. Samsara and nirvana lack even an atom of inherent existence, and cause and effect and dependent arising are unbetraying. I seek your blessings to discern the meaning of Nagarjuna's thought, that these two are mutually complementary and not contradictory. May the precious realization of the 2 stages, so generation stage, completion stage, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And then we can go to the prayer of Kajula. So I don't know if I'm just be patient with me while I resize it for you. Okay, maybe that might work a little bit, hey? Let's see, that should work, yeah? Cool. A supplication for the swift return of the Supreme Lord of Refuge, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Bakadrila. Guru, think of me. Guru, consider me. Gracious Guru, care for me. Root Guru, most gracious and kind, do not deprive us of your compassionate refuge. Listen and consider this heartfelt prayer made by a tormented disciple. Guru, you embody the blessings of the Buddhas of the 3 times. Here we go, Barbara. You may rest in the great bliss equipoise within the dhatu of unimpeded luminosity. Yet the playful dance of your loving compassion can emanate in myriad ways, the swift appearance of your magical wisdom, the Rupakaya. The time has come for you to care for us once again with your affectionate compassion. I invoke you, I call upon you, I implore you on behalf of all beings. Arise, arise, arise from the Dharmakaya. Do not rest in Kachara or other pure celestial realms. Rather, to benefit the Buddha's teachings and all living beings, swiftly return to the southern continent to spread the Buddha Dharma of study and realization. quickly return to guide us poor, wretched beings. Such is the desperate cry of us, your disciples, return, so that we may actually behold your presence and receive the blessings of your enlightened body, speech, and mind. All violations, errors, mistakes, and broken samaya that we have made in relation to your spontaneously present, awakened body, speech, mind, and activity, through our being baffled, confused, and conceiving things in erroneous ways, we confess within the luminous emptiness of your three kayas, of everything auspicious, the supreme auspiciousness. May there be the auspiciousness of emptiness and compassion, conjoined with the auspiciousness of a timely meeting between masters and disciples. Through the force of the truth of unchanging suchness, may the unmistaken incarnation return quickly. This lament was made by Mia Dakini with pure faith and samaya, her eyes filled with tears of sorrow. May these wishes of a beggar woman be fulfilled through the blessings of the deities of the three roots. Perception, its object, the act of perceiving, all dissolve within the expanse, the blissful clarity of suchness. Okay, thank you, everyone. I've really got to go as well. So sorry for being late, but thank you for your time. And I'm going to take a bit of a break to look after my health and focus on the prayers of Rinpoche's practices we're doing all the time, and just teach here at Chenrezig Institute. But I will meet you again, I hope, in July, and we can do the Heart Sutra together. So more emptiness. But yeah, so do take excellent care, and thank you very much for the opportunity. And I totally rejoice in your efforts and your kindness. So thank you so much. Okay.